is Caroline Heiss, film critic and journalist, and this is one of my interviews for K-Crush American Magazine at the 2024 Jeonju International Film Festival. And today I am joined by director Lee-Won Sik to talk about his documentary, A Song of Korean Factory Girls, which documents the experiences of young girls who were brought from Korea into Japan in like the 1910s during the Japanese occupation of Korea, and these would have been called Zainichi Koreans, who are first, second, and third gen going on Korean and Japanese people. And the film is very informative because it really gives an insight into the struggles that these young girls went through. So I'm so happy to have director E joining me today. So my first question for you is, how did you find the three ladies in the film? So the film follows the experiences of three women who are still alive, who worked in the textile factories in Osaka, Japan. And there are Nam Suk Shin, who was 99 years old during filming, Soon Ja Kim, who was 84 years old during filming, and Song Nam Kim, who was 98 years old. So how did you find the three of them in particular?
첫 번째 이제 99세 신남숙 선생님, 84세 김순자 선생님, 그리고 98세 김성남 선생님을 어떻게 처음에 찾게 되셨나요?
네. 일단은 너무 오랜 시간이 지난 뒤에 그분들의 증언들을 구하는 거였기 때문에 일단은 기본적으로 할머니들을 찾는 게 너무 힘든 상황이긴 했습니다. 하지만 막막한 상황이었기 때문에 일단 무작정 방적 공장이 있는 곳 오사카에 가게 됐었고, 그곳에서 저희가 작은 엽서를 제작해서 이렇게 계속 걸어서 다니면서 또 아시는 분들한테 엽서를 전하면서 그분들을 수소문하기 시작했고요. 그러다가 이제 꽤 오랜 시간이 지나서 그 뒤에 이제 조금씩 이제 연락이 오기 시작하게 됐고, 정말 이제 극적으로 이렇게 거의 99세 되신 할머니 분들을 이제 찾을 수 있게 됐기 때문에 저희가 사실은 그분들을 저희가 막 찾으려고 노력했다라기보다 이렇게 누군가 이렇게 만나게 해주신 것 같은, 보이지 않는 힘, 그런 느낌이 굉장히 많이 든 상태로 만나게 됐습니다. 네.
What I thought was really interesting for these three women, that you felt like it was meant to be, but that they all have very clear memories of everything that happened to them, even though it was like 70, going on possibly 70 years ago. And like one of the ladies, Shin Nam-suk, she said she couldn't even remember what happened the day before, but she could remember what happened while she was working in the spinning mill. So what was it like for you to speak to someone who has such clear memories of everything that happened then?
트라우마가 얼마나 강했으면 그것들이 이분들의 평생의 삶을 지배할 수 있었을까라는 부분들이 좀 굉장히 안타깝고 가슴이 아픈 마음이 가장 먼저 들었었고요. 근데 이 영화의 주제가 사실은 이분들이 차별과 핍박 속에서 이방인으로 이민자로 살아서 너무 힘들다라는 이야기가 아니라 힘들지만 이들은 그 안에서도 승리할 수 있었고 밝게 자신들의 삶을 개척하고 굴하지 않고 그렇게 강하게 살아냈던 모습들이 저한테는 굉장히 큰 감동이었습니다. 그리고 그분들을 만났을 때 그분들이 그렇게 이제 힘든 트라우마를 갖고 있지만 그럼에도 불구하고 일본에서 차별 속에서도 가족을 계속 대를 이어서 살아내고 있고 엄청나게 대가족을 이루고 그 코리안이라는 정체성을 가지고 살고 있는 것들, 그리고 그런 핍박들이 이제는 괜찮다라고 용서하고 이해하는 그 삶의 자세들이 저한테는 너무나 큰 감동이었고 감격스러운 다큐멘터리만이 느낄 수 있는 감동을 제일 먼저 받은 수혜자라고 생각합니다.
Because of this trauma that they experienced, I was thinking, how big is this trauma that it dominates their whole lives? So I felt really bad for them, and I felt really sad for them. That was the first impression that I got. However, the theme of this movie is not just about the discrimination and all the difficulties, the challenges that they were faced as immigrants. Although they had these challenges, within that situation, they experienced some kind of victory, and they lived in a bright manner, and they pursued a happy life despite all of those challenges. So I was very glad that they chose that life, and it was very emotional, very touching. So meeting them, rather than them focusing on the trauma, despite all the discrimination that they experienced in Japan, they continued their lineage of their family and ended up making a huge family with the Korean identity. So, and their attitude toward life was that it was okay that they experienced all that discrimination in the past. They have already forgiven, and they understand. And that attitude towards life was really touching for me. This is something that can only be felt through documentaries, and I feel that I was the first recipient of this emotion.
I think so too, because it was really impactful for the film. As you said, it's not just about the trauma, but it's about the victories, and that came through like the strikes that they had, but then also them managing to live the life they wanted after. And we're gonna get to that, but I think it's important to go back to the beginning, to how these women came to be in Osaka, Japan in the first place. So it started with the Japanese occupation of Korea, Joseon at that time, and that was in 1910. And when that happened, like it's in the film, but the Korean economy fell apart. That's because Japan wanted to dominate everything. For those who don't know, what Japan did is they basically made it illegal for Koreans to farm their own land and profit from the farming. So people who farmed rice, they couldn't even use their own rice. The rice was shipped out and was used for the profit of Japan and the Japanese Empire. And speaking in Korean was illegal. They couldn't wear their own traditional hanbok and traditional clothing, and they had to speak Japanese. Speaking Korean was made illegal. And these women, like, they came from Korea as children. Many of them were young, 13, 12, 10 years old, when working the spinning mill. So the film actually starts out documenting that, but then you mentioned something that I wasn't aware of, and that was the haruman, which is pig intestines or offal, sold at the yakiniku stands in Japan, which is so popular now. but it wasn't popular at the beginning. Talk to me about starting the film there.
네, 네. 일본은 메이지 유신 전까지 고기를 섭취하지 않았습니다. 그러니까 육식을 하지 않았는데 메이지 유신 이후에 서양 문물이 들어오게 되면서 이제 서양 사람들처럼 키도 커지고 싶고 이제 강력한 어떤 국력을 기르고 싶다라는 생각 때문에 고기를 갑작스럽게 이제 먹는 산업을 일으키기 시작했던 거죠. 하지만 일본 사람들은 오랫동안 고기를 먹은 적이 없었기 때문에 고기를 어떻게 가공하고 또 그것을 어떻게 먹어야 되는지 몰랐었습니다. 그래서 고기의 살코기는 다 먹었지만 내장과 뭐 껍데기 이런 것들은 다 그냥 쓰레기로 버렸던 거죠. 근데 한국뿐만이 아니라 동남아시아나 또 유럽의 많은 나라들에서는 그 내장을 가지고 하는 요리들이 굉장히 발전하고 있었습니다. 일본과는 다르게. 조선에서 온 여성들은 그게 이제 먹는 것에 익숙했기 때문에 쓰레기로 버린 그 음식들을 주워와서 끓여 먹고 구워 먹기 시작하면서 호르몬이라는 요리가 생기게 됐고요. 그 호르몬이라는 요리의 어떤 호르몬은 지금 현재 일본에서 굉장히 인기 있는 음식으로 이렇게 완전히 전환되게 된 거죠. 그런 것처럼 저는 이 조선에서 온 여공들의 삶이 올 때는 굉장히 힘든 어떤 시대적인 배경 속에서 왔지만 그들의 현재 삶은 그것들을 극복하고 살아가는 어떤 그런 용기, 또 에너지 이런 것들이 호르몬이 가지고 있는 그 모순된 상징성과 닮아 있다라고 생각했습니다. 네, 그리고 그렇기 때문에 그 부분을 가지고 와서 영화의 시작 도입부로 이야기를 시작하게 됐습니다.
Japanese people until the Meiji era, they did not eat any meat, and only starting from the Meiji era, when they started to opening up to the Western culture, they wanted to be more like Westerners. They wanted to be taller, and they wanted to grow in their national power. So all of a sudden, their meat industry started to grow. However, Japanese people were not used to eating the meat. They didn't know how to process it. They didn't know how to consume it. So they consumed only the flesh part of it, and any intestine or skin, they just threw it away as garbage. But at that time, Korea, not only Korea, but Southeast Asian countries and European countries, they were developing their cuisine using intestine, which is different from Japan. So the Korean ladies who went to Japan at that time, they were used to eating intestine. So they boiled it and they barbecued it and to consume it. That's how horumon started to be a cuisine. And right now, nowadays, horumon is a very popular. It transitioned to be a very popular dish. So I wanted to represent this through the ladies' lives, because when they came to Japan, they were faced with lots of challenges. They were going through lots of difficulties. However, they overcame those challenges with their courage and energy. And I think that the paradox of Horomon symbolically resembles their lives. That's why I added that into the introduction.
And that's very common around the world, where people who were looked down upon, the food that they ate has now become considered like cuisine, like fancy cuisine. Like for instance, in the Caribbean, food that is traditional to us. When visitors visit the islands, that's considered like fancy fare. It's been made to suit their palates. And even if you go to like North America, in the U.S., lobster was actually only eaten by poor people because it was so common and it was considered ugly. And like lobster and clams and oysters was only eaten by poor people. But now it's so expensive, and like it can only usually be found at specific types of restaurants or like expensive. So when you made that connection in the film, I was just like, it's the same everywhere, where the food of the oppressed becomes the cuisine of the oppressors.
이게 전 세계에서 마찬가지인 것 같습니다. 이런 음식이 어떤 하나의 요리가 된다는 게요. 이제 카리브해에서도 마찬가지로 전통적으로 저희가 먹던 식사들이 이제 외부인들이 들어오면서 뭔가 굉장히 화려한 요리가 되는데요. 미국도 마찬가지입니다. 럽스터나 뭐 굴, 조개 이런 것들은 예전에 굉장히 흔했었고 뭐 못나 보였기 때문에 가난한 사람들이 먹는 음식이었는데, 이제는 굉장히 고가에 팔리는, 그리고 특정 식당에서만 파는 굉장히 고급스러운 요리가 되었죠. 그래서 전 세계가 똑같다라고 생각을 했어요. 이렇게 지배를 당하던 자들의 음식이 지배하는 자들의 요리가 되었구나라는 생각이 들었습니다.
And so in starting the film there, you're establishing how for the Zainichi Koreans in particular, how everything about them was looked down upon by Japan. And I think beginning there, but then showing how they were able to overcome that gives, as narratively in the film, it gives an arc. It gives a complete narrative arc to the film. So when you were writing the film, was that a consideration with regards to writing the script and developing the story to kind of give them a narrative arc?
거기서부터 영화를 시작하셨다는 걸 보면은 이제 제일 교포들이 처음에는 조금 천대를 받는 입장에서 이제는 그거를 극복한 것을 다 보여주는데, 그렇기 때문에 이제 그 만드신 영화의 내러티브가 하나의 호를 그리며 완성된 내러티브라는 생각이 드는데요. 이런 내러티브를 가지고 가겠다라고 초반부터 계획을 하셨었던 건가요?
전혀 아닙니다. 네. 왜냐하면 전체적인 뭐 구성은 한 상태였지만 다큐멘터리를 만드는 방식 자체가 처음부터 구성을 해서 만드는 건 아니었었고요. 그 할머니들을 이렇게 운명처럼 만나게 된 것처럼 그들의 이야기를 듣게 되고 또 공부를 하게 되고, 그들의 이야기를 들은 것들을 또 이제 저희가 회의를 통해서 이게 어떤 의미가 있는지를 계속 서치하고 찾는 과정을 통해서 이야기가 만들어지기 시작했고, 이런 방향성이 갈 때, 이런 방향성으로 다큐멘터리를 만들어 갈 때 이 영화가 단지 한국과 일본의 관계 안에서 있는 그런 이방인과 이민자들의 영화가 아니라 전 세계 많은 이민자들과 이방인들을 위한 영화가 될 수 있겠구나 라는 생각을 갖게 됐고, 그런 관점에서 이제 이야기들의 얼개나 구성들을 이제 만들게 된 것 같습니다.
No, not at all. I didn't plan it from the beginning stages. Because of course I had an overall idea of what the documentary will be about. However, I didn't devise a clear structure from the beginning. It was destiny. It felt like destiny that I got to meet these older ladies, and after hearing their stories and studying what had happened, we had meetings within ourselves and we searched for the meaning. And based on that, a story came to life. And after taking this direction, we thought that this film should not be just a story of immigrants, of Korean versus Japan relationship, but it could be a story of immigrants all over the world. That is how I developed it.
Yeah, it is. Like I mentioned, I'm from the Caribbean, and slavery was there. It was prevalent for hundreds of years, and that's not everything that we are. But it's the foundation of who we are. You know, it's where we came from. That's is a significant part of our culture and our identity, and also being able to look at how things that happened then brought out who we became to be. For instance, our carnivals. Carnival started as celebration at the end of harvest season, you know, and that became meaningful for our culture. The food, using the food, we took the scraps that was available to us and made it into our own traditional dishes. And I relate a lot to Korean, to that element of Korean culture and Korean history. And for these young women, I relate a lot to that. Like they were children working. They were basically in what we would consider indentured servants, and they were lied to. They were taken from their homes, and they were lied to and taken from their families, and they were basically imprisoned in these cotton mills. So I relate a lot to that part, to how the story is basically, I think, a universal story. And I think something that's really important is you talk about their lives within the factory. So it's not just about the factories, it's about their lives, how they lived, like the conditions they lived in, the relationship they had. Talk to me about being with these women and listen to them talk to it, because like you mentioned, it's like, yes, the film is not about trauma, but they did experience it. And like that could be difficult for them to recount. So what were the steps you and your film team took to make sure that if, for instance, one of the ladies became upset, how you managed that situation?
기본적으로 그 할머니 분들의 삶의 자세들이 너무나 긍정적인 사고들을 가지고 있었습니다. 그리고 그런 긍정적인 생각들은 저희가 일반적으로 가지고 있는 선입견들하고는 너무나 다른 것들이었어요. 그분들은 굉장히 밝고 긍정적으로 삶을 살아가려고 하는 자세들을 이미 배우고 그렇게 살아남으려고 하는 방법이 그거였다라고 생각됩니다. 그래서 인터뷰를 진행하는 내내 그분들의 괴로웠고 힘들었던 삶의 이야기를 꺼내는 게 사실은 조심스러웠지만 그분들은 오히려 더 이렇게 적극적으로 그 얘기들을 이제 얘기해 주셨고 특별히 이제 저는 그 인터뷰를 하면서 요청드렸던 거는 슬프고 힘든 일뿐만이 아니라 즐거웠던 일은 있었는지, 혹은 한국 사람과 일본 사람하고의 관계에 있어서 차별과 핍박뿐만이 아니라 우정과 또 교류나 이런 커뮤니케이션이 있었는지 이런 쪽으로도 많이 질문을 드렸었던 것 같아요. 그리고 그런 부분들에 대한 이야기들을 자연스럽게 해주시면서 인터뷰가 너무나 이제 그 어둡고 다크한 쪽으로만 가는 것이 아니라 그들의 삶의 좀 입체적인 면들이 더욱더 부각되게 된 것 같다고 생각됩니다. 네.
And in doing the interviews, you did something very interesting. So in the film, there is one particular young lady who acts as the interviewer, and she also her and two other young ladies basically reenact some elements of their lives during like the 1910s while they were working at the cotton mill. So one of the first ones, her name is Hannah Kang, and she's a fourth generation Korean Japanese, and she's the one that we follow throughout the film. How did you find her, and why did you decide to have her act as the interviewer within the film? Because I thought it was a very interesting choice, and it gives the film almost it's a storytelling element. Rather than just a documentary, it feels more like a story being told.
정말 아쉽게도 한국에 살고 있는 한국 사람들은 일본에 살고 있는 제일 조선의 자이니치들에 대해서 사실 잘 모르고 관심도 없는 상황입니다. 그렇기 때문에 오히려 한국의 어떤 배우나 한국의 어떤 프레젠터가 그분들을 이해하기 위해서 인터뷰를 하는 것들이 조금은 과장되고 인위적일 수도 있다는 생각이 들었고요. 오히려 자이니치로 살아온 4세대의 여성이 주인공이 돼서 그 자이니치가 자신의 이제 어머니 세대, 할머니 세대를 이해하는 과정으로 푸는 것들이 훨씬 더 이야기를 집중해서 설명할 수 있고 공감대를 훨씬 더 많은 부분 가져오면서 이야기를 할 수 있지 않을까라고 생각했습니다. 근데 그게 이제 이 영화가 가지고 있는 지향점이 어떻게 보면은 그동안 한국 영화들은 일본과 한국과의 역사에 관한 문제를 다큐멘터리로 만들거나 드라마로 풀 때 대부분 반일적인 시각이나 자기 위한 피해자로서의 감정으로만 굉장히 많이 영화를 만들어 왔는데, 저는 그런 반일적인 피해자라는 심파적인 영화 느낌보다는 앞으로의 한국과 일본의 관계를 위해서는 긍정적인 메시지를 줄 수 있는 이야기들이 필요하다고 생각했고, 그런 공감대를 위해서는 자이니치 프레젠터가 자이니치들을 이해하는 이야기를 만드는 게 더 중요하지 않을까라는 생각을 하게 됐었습니다. 네.
And I agree. I actually think that element is important, especially with how you ended off with the Hana in the past talking to the Hana in the present, and having the Hana in the present being on Jeju Island, Jeju. I thought it was a very interesting choice, and it actually made me tear up. I got very emotional because it made me think of how my ancestors in Africa talking to me, like I'm getting emotional talking to me in the present and asking how I and my people are doing now, and I'm getting to tell my ancestors we're okay. So I completely agree with that decision, and I love that decision.
감사합니다. 네, thank you so much. 사실 저는 이 영화가 100년 전의 이야기를 다루고 있지만 이건 결국 100년 전의 이야기가 아니라고 생각합니다. 왜냐하면 여전히 일본에 남아있는 자이니치들은 차별과 핍박을 여전히 받고 있는 상태이고, 또 시리아나 또 이스라엘이나 또 팔레스타인이나 또 아프리카 여러 나라 안에서도 분쟁과 전쟁과 기근과 또 가난으로 많은 사람들이 이방인이 되고 또 이민자가 돼서 또 어린 아이들은 돈을 벌어야 되는 상황에 처하는 것들이 지금 현재 우리가 살고 있는 세상이 여전히 진행되고 있는 일이기 때문에 이 영화가 단지 한국과 일본의 관계 안에서 있었던 특정 자이니치들에 대한 이야기가 아니라 세계의 많은 사람들에게 또 영감과 위로의 메시지를 줄 수 있었으면 좋겠다라는 소망들이 다큐멘터리를 만들면서 많이 들었던 것 같아요.
Thank you so much for your words. Although this the Chinese today are also going through these discriminations and challenges. And the same is happening in Syria, Israel, Palestine, and countries in Africa. There are disputes, wars, battles, famine, and poverty. And because of this, they are forced to being immigrants in other countries, and still little children are in the situation where they have to earn money. This is something that is still happening today. So this movie is not just about the Koreans and Japanese in this particular Jainichi situation. However, I have the hope, as I was making this film, I kept having the hope that this film will be an inspiration and comfort to people all around the world.
Because unfortunately, oppression is universal. Imperialism is universal. You know, it wasn't just Japan. It wasn't just England. It wasn't just Europe. You know, China or whatever. It's a global situation. And the film, what I thought was also interesting is, like, in talking about the women's lives while they were working in the factories, I didn't only think of, for instance, like my own ancestors. I thought of how for instance, in Wales and in England, the same cotton mills that were used in Japan were also used in the cotton mills in Wales and England. And like Irish workers, they were very oppressed, and they've also died of tuberculosis, dysentery, dehydration, starvation, and cotton lung. Like cotton lung is a condition that people who worked in the cotton mills got because they inhaled the fluff. And like so many people around the world, like mechanization and capitalism. I think the film really talks about capitalism and how capitalism is essentially the ultimate oppressor, because with that advancement came the oppression. Right? And I think your film really, if you look at it outside of the context of just Japan and Korea, if you look at what caused it, essentially, capitalism is the really big bad. Capitalism is the bad. So we're wrapping up now. So at the beginning we mentioned the victory element of the film, and that would be like the women went on to have lives after they were able to leave the factories, but even while they were in the factories they had moments of victories. For instance, the strike. There was a general strike where these 500 of the girls and women held off for 41 days. And I think that's so impressive, and I think that's so important to highlight, because it shows that even, especially for women, in all of these situations that we've talked about, women and young girls are usually the ones who suffer the most, because they suffer sexual violence, they suffer from patriarchy and misogyny and all of these things. But it shows like the resilience, I think, of girls and women in particular, where they're like, you know what, we can stand up even in the midst of oppression. You know, we can still be reclaimed for ourselves. And I thought it was really important that the film highlight, as well as after that, one of the women, she says she went to school, middle school, to learn to read and write at 51 years old, right? And it shows that it's never too late, you know, to reclaim and power for yourself. So talk to me about that element of the film.
사람은 굉장히 강하게 지어진 존재인 것 같습니다. 그리고 많은 어떤 트라우마들과 또 상처들 때문에 굉장히 많이 힘을 잃고 또 자살하는 사람도 있고 힘들어하는 사람들도 있지만 기본적으로 저는 사람은 굉장히 강하고 아름답게 지어진 소중한 존재라고 생각합니다. 그리고 그런 점들을 이 영화를 통해서 저는 좀 얘기하고 싶었다라는 생각을 하게 된 것 같아요. 그 할머니들의 이야기를 들으면서 그분들의 그런 고난 속에서도 긍정적으로 가족을 지키려고 했었고 그런 희생적인 면들, 요즘은 뭐 세대가 되게 희생도 어려워지고 내가 피해보는 거 싫어하고 또 힘든 거 싫어하고 이런 시대가 점점 되어가고 있고 각자가 너무 힘든 삶들을 살아가는 시대이고 세대이지만 그런 가운데 이 영화가 조금은 희망적인 메시지를 주고 그래 우리는 아름답게 지어졌고 잘 살아갈 수 있어 라는 메시지를 관객들이 좀 받았으면 좋지 않을까. 왜냐하면 그런 메시지를 제가 영화를 찍으면서 받았기 때문에 네, 그렇게 말씀드리고 싶어요.
I think that was amazing. Like, right? No, honestly, like I love the film and I love that you made it. Last year while I was here, I saw another documentary. It was a short film, and it talked about the factories in Korea. Like there were factories, I believe, in like Jeju-do, and some in Seoul where the girls made the uniforms for the Japanese soldiers. And so your film, I think, kind of like sits right opposite that one. So we have the perspective of the factories in Korea, and we also have the perspective of the factories in Osaka. And there's another documentary I did the interview yesterday called Voices, and it talks about the Jeju massacre. And both of these films, I think it's so amazing that we have these films talking about the resilience of women and the resilience of people who go through such traumatic experience and being able to come out of it. You know, well, the trauma doesn't disappear, but it doesn't break you, and it doesn't, you know, it doesn't have to dictate your life. And I think your film does a fantastic job of highlighting that and also acknowledging the history, because we can't move forward without understanding our past.
감사합니다. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
감사드립니다.
And I cried.
저희